Welcome, everybody. It's November 9th. John Aravosis here, coming to you live from Washington, D.C. This is the Aravosis Report, my nightly show where we talk about the latest news from Ukraine, but also lately the latest news from Israel and Gaza. Let me get TikTok rolling here on my iPad. And as always, maybe introduce yourselves while we are waiting. I like to wait a couple minutes, maybe 2 minutes, just because the notice goes out on TikTok and other social media. Hang on here. Live. There we go. Go live. Boom. Anyway, hello all. Hello. We had another nice sunset in DC tonight. A little bit of rain for an hour, which the dog freaked out, of course, because that's what she does. And she, of course, knew it was coming because she's a genius. Anyway, it was not fun. She's doing better now. She's asleep on the couch, so that was a good thing. Anyway, hello all. Hello. Hello. As I said, we'll wait a minute or two for folks to join us. So, hey, Jillian. Andre. So yes, what is going on, folks? Hey, Jonathan. Thank you for that. What is going on? You're very welcome, Swan person. Hey, Cassandra. Thank you. I've got to remember to mention that about the stupid font size. What was that? Frumple? Actually, I'm going to see if I can. I'm going to show you this. Hold on. I was mentioning this the other day. Wait, once this comes on, I'm going to take a picture and show you guys the next gift somebody gives. Come on, give me the gifts. Give me the gifts. Give me the gifts. There we go. All right, Jetta. Let me see if this is big enough to show you guys the difference. Well, you can pretty much see. Okay, notice how. Thank you for that. Who was that? Crazy and Joe. Thank you, Peoples and Joe. So notice how in the upper left it tells me who gave the gift, right? You see where it says Jetta? I'm going to try and I'll show you guys over there in a second. Oop, where is this? Here, Jetta, where it says Jetta right there. Notice the font down here of all the rest of you. And this is the special gift where they paid more for. The one they paid more for is smaller. Do you see what I'm talking about? Here, you guys check this out. The one up here is the one they paid more for. The one that says Jetta, you may not be able to see it. These are the other gifts and comments. These are big font. This is itty bitty font. I don't know what possessed. I mean, TikTok drives me nuts. What would possess you to say, hey, thank you, Velika? I'm like literally having to go like this to read this stuff. What would possess you to say, hey, your most generous supporters, let's make their name really small so you can't see it. Hey, there's a brilliant idea. I told you guys I'm on a lifelong vendetta against engineers in their 20s. Bingo, 22-year-old coders. Thank you, Frumple. That's exactly what I'm saying. Thank you, Kronos. I mean, children who do engineering, who do coding, and they haven't lived through life yet, and they have no idea. Thank you, Martin. Literally, they haven't experienced life yet. Thank you, Jetta. So they haven't met anybody over 40 talking about that you can't read things. Oh my God. My washer dryer is done. I know. I never realized how many people have that washer and dryer. Thank you, John. That's the new washer and dryer. But yes, it's my nephew's got the same one, which I'm talking to my sister and I hear it go off and I'm like, oh, does he have the same one? Everyone's got the same LG. Anyway, so welcome, folks. I think I can get rolling here. Hello, Ireland. So I am John Aravosis. Welcome for joining us. Welcome. Thank you for joining us. That's what I was going to say. Thank you for joining us. Welcome. Now that you have joined us. Thank you, Chris, for the gift. I am coming from Washington, D.C. Expanding universe. You are a 24-year-old engineer. Just remember, no. I'm going to stop going on this rant here, but why TikTok changed the font? Thank you, Mustard. So that all the comments are a certain size, but if you give an extra special gift, it shows me at the top who you are, except it shows it half the size font. And they just changed it. Why would you shrink the font on anything on the page, let alone like somebody who is more generous? It makes it, you get what I'm saying. It's not even just poor eyesight of older people. Why would you shrink the font? Oh, all right. I stop now. Hey, Michael. Oh, may all you 20-something coders have to work at the UN some point. That is my pox on you. All right. Thank you, Michael, for the gift and MD Gadget. So welcome, guys. The way the show works is I go through the news. Thank you, Cassandra and Pedro, of stuff that I think is important today. I'm going to go through Israel, then I'm going to go through Ukraine. We've got not a ton of Israel, Gaza news. I've got a good amount of Ukraine news. There's a just good amount of news today about Ukraine. So we'll be talking about that a lot. And the way we do it is I will go through the news first, Second half of the show, I'll take your guys' questions, your comments, etc. We can debate whatever you like. But for anybody who really has to get a question in, thank you, Macabre. You can always get a question in on YouTube. YouTube is the only TikTok ought to do this. I don't know. Again, TikTok, be innovative. TikTok, not as innovative as YouTube. Thank you, 863. YouTube, you can buy a super chat question where basically you can pay to ask a question. It's a donation to me, which is great. And as a thank you, I will answer that question right away. Thank you, Marvelous. Otherwise, I will try to get to your guys' questions anyway. I can't get to all of them, but I try. And finally, the gifts on TikTok, by the way, when you're gonna see me squinting to read who gave them, like mustard there. But nonetheless, I very much appreciate your guys' gifts on TikTok. I do this for free. I do it full time. And basically, the way I'm able to do this is with your guys' gifts, because I don't have to take consulting work, which I would normally be doing, and I can focus full time on Ukraine and now on Israel and Gaza as well. So thank you. Please do keep the gifts coming. That's why I bother you guys. Mustard, you're on a roll tonight. Thank you for all the gifts. All right, guys, let's get rolling here. So, coffee talk. Thank you, Mustard. I am not doing my coffee talk on Saturday. Thank you, Skull and Bones. Normally I do a Saturday morning coffee talk, Seed. Thank you for my paid subscribers. Saturday I'm flying back to Chicago. Thank you, James and B. But Sunday, maybe. Let's see. I'm kind of waiting. Sunday, maybe. Not Saturday morning, though. Thank you, Courtney, since I'm going to be getting ready to fly. Thank you, Big Hawk. So Israel, let's jump into Israel first, and then we'll do Ukraine next. As I said, there's not a ton of news for Israel, but there's news. And then Ukraine, there's a good amount of news. The Israeli Defense Forces said in a statement that its soldiers had taken control of a Hamas military stronghold in northern Gaza. As always, I like to sort of show you guys the maps just to give you a sense of what's going on. I do need to thank you, Alex. I do need to reprint this one so that it doesn't shine, but if I tilt it, it doesn't shine. So yellow is Israel. This is Egypt. This is Jordan, Syria, Lebanon up here. The Palestinian territories are the West Bank here and Gaza here. Gaza is the one where all this garbage has been happening now. Gaza is the one where Hamas, a terrorist group, is the government there. They're the ones that attacked Israel on October 7th, all the carnage, etc. That is the place Israel is responding, attacking. So northern Gaza, the Israelis invaded as of a couple days ago. Thank you. Who's that? Lal Hunt, maybe? As of a couple days ago, the Israelis had basically cut Gaza in two. Their forces have gone across here, and the forces have come down here and come down here. They're basically circling Gaza City in the north, the largest city in Gaza. It's like 600,000 people. Gaza's population is 2.3 million overall. The rest of Gaza is down here. Here's Egypt here. Rest of Gaza is down here. So Israel is surrounding Gaza City in the north. Now, Israel says that in that northern area, they took out a Hamas stronghold. Thank you, Fox, for that. Thank you, Valerie. Yemen's Houthis. So Yemen, I may have to get a bigger map of the Middle East too. Yemen, which is a country east and maybe a little bit south. I'd have to look at the map to figure out what the is that longitude, latitude? I never even know what that is, but I'd have to sort of look and see. But more or less east of Egypt, sort of east of Saudi Arabia there. Thank you, Amy. Yemen has a group called the Houthis. The Houthis are part of an Iran-aligned regional alliance, which includes Hamas and Lebanon's Hezbollah. They govern, thank you, Vicky, they govern swaths of Yemen, including the capital, Sana'a, more than 1,000 miles from Israel. The Houthis launched a batch of ballistic missiles at Israel today, including military targets in the city of Eilat. The Israeli military said that air defense systems in the area of the Red Sea intercepted a missile launched towards its territory. They've been causing problems. They also fired, and I believe maybe even took down a U.S. drone the other day. And speaking of drones, there were more attacks against U.S. troops today in the Middle East. Last night, you might recall that U.S. forces, or yesterday, attacked Iranian Revolutionary Guard forces, or at least forces associated with them yesterday, as retaliation for the 40-some attacks that there have been on U.S. troops since the war broke out between Israel and Gaza, on October 7th. An armed drone targeted, there were two more drone attacks today. So basically, U.S. attacks last night, trying to send a message to Iran, stop it. Two more attacks on U.S. troops today. One was an armed drone targeting a joint patrol of U.S. forces and Iraqi counterterrorism service near the northern Iraqi city of Mosul. And then approximately 50 miles east in the city of Erbil, an armed drone targeted the Al Harir Air Base, which hosts U.S. forces, but it was downed. Further south, oh, that's what I think it is. It is 4 of them, yeah. Further south, defense systems at another air base also shot down an armed drone. Yeah, so kind of scary. Kind of not a good thing. YouTube's fine. Folks are on YouTube right now. Old Progy. It's John Aravosis DC on YouTube. It's there. It's live. People are there. What else we got? Israel. So this was a weird story today. It was kind of a good story, and then it got weird. So the good aspect of the story is it appears that some kind of short humanitarian pauses have been agreed to. But the thing is, Israel kind of denied it. U.S. government came out and said, big breaking news, very exciting. Every day we are going to have 4-hour pauses in the fighting where Israel is going to basically, Israel is, as I said, has northern Gaza circled. So Israel's got its troops going across here to the water, that Israel will basically, this is what the U.S. said, Israel will open up the area here, stop fighting for 4 hours, and let refugees basically leave northern Gaza and go to the south so they can get out of the area of the fighting. Well, Israel then says, that's not what we're doing. Israel says nothing new was agreed to. What Israel says, and what it looks like might be happening is Israel was sort of informally letting people go from the north to the south because, again, they've cut Gaza in half. They can stop anybody from passing through because they've got their troops in a line. They were sort of informally letting people go. Over the last couple of days, I think 50,000 people, maybe yesterday, I think it was 50,000 people crossed from north to south. Yeah, it was 50,000. 80,000 crossed today. I mean, that's a good number at least. Thank you, adventurers. But it wasn't sort of a set agreed to thing. What Israel has now agreed to is every day they will give a 4-hour period that people can cross. There won't be fighting. It'll be safe. It looks like it's not going to be fighting overall will be stopped. It will be certain neighborhoods, certain areas, basically letting people, and they will get 3 hours notice before it kicks in, and then it will kick in for 4 hours. People will be able to leave. They won't be shot at. Now, that's still good. Well, it depends how you look at it, actually. You could argue it's not enough. Biden says it's not enough. Biden says he wants humanitarian pauses of like 3 days. He wants a 3-day pause that gives time for people to leave, but also time for food, fuel, water, all sorts of stuff, medicine to come in. What was I going to say? There's something else with this. I don't think it's in my notes. I was going to tell you with this. Oh, yeah. So you might be complaining it's not long enough, 4 hours. B, and this is a big problem, Hamas has not agreed to this. In principle, thank you, Amber, Israel is going to stop fighting in some area to let civilians get through. If Hamas starts attacking Israel from that area, Israel is going to have to respond. So Israel might start, I mean, this is not what Israel's saying, but it's logic. Israel may have to start fighting again. So Hamas can still screw this up. So just be aware of it. Nonetheless, you know what? It's progress. Consider it. Oh, I'm sorry. The last thing is, there certainly is concern of, and this was concern at the beginning, Israel told everybody that they were going to attack the north. There has been some attacks on the south, but most of the fighting, at least initially, was going to be in the north of Gaza. They told everybody. They said evacuate. The response, which was reasonable, was that you've got 1 million people in northern Gaza. You don't just tell 1 million people to leave. That's kind of a lot. And where would they go? They go to southern Gaza. A lot of them maybe don't have family down there or whatever, right? So it's a fair point. Now that the fighting we know is really bad, now that we know it is causing a lot of civilian deaths, there may be more of not just more of an impetus for people in the north to go south, but maybe, if Israel's not going to stop the fighting, let's put it that way. Thank you, Andre. It would probably be very smart of people to head south because it's going to be a lot less dangerous for them heading south than staying in the north. In any case, that's where things are. Let's see if Hamas screws it up. What else we got here? 80,000 people, I just told you, fled south today, which was a good number. A senior Biden administration official says the number of Palestinians killed in Gaza is very possibly higher than the 10,000 number being reported by the health ministry, Gaza's Palestinian health ministry that gets its data from Hamas, it should be said. That was interesting to me. That is either a mistake or it's on purpose. And what I mean by that is either Biden wants to sort of start sending a message to Israel that they need to somehow cut back on the civilian casualties, and therefore he wanted to telegraph U.S. concerns, say it might even be greater than 10,000, or this senior official is speaking out of turn and they're about to get slapped down. We will know by tomorrow. I'd say we'd know by tonight. We'll know by tonight. If the White House comes out and corrects this official, then we know the official's in trouble and basically was freelancing on their own and said something. If the White House doesn't shoot this person down by tomorrow, I think it's an indication that Biden wanted to be a little bit. Oh, you're okay. Thank you. Sorry. My dog cracks me up because she doesn't like sneezing and coughing. So whenever I sneeze, she jumps up and it's been 14 years of me sneezing, but she still, thank you, Ash. And Alex, she'll still jump up and be like, huh, like what could that noise possibly be for the umpteenth time in 14 years? Thank you, Kronos. So anyway, keep an eye on that. It's interesting. Negotiations for the hostages. So there are 240, 239, 244, I'm seeing around that number, hostages that Hamas took when they invaded Israel on October 7th. When they killed the 1,400 people, they also took 240, give or take, hostages. Actually, by the way, one thing that was interesting about that, we were talking about this the other day, and remember, I was sort of trying to think this through with you guys as to why the number of hostages keeps changing. And at the time I was thinking, well, they probably don't necessarily know if somebody's missing. Are they just missing? I mean, you could have been murdered separately, right? There was a murder and you're missing, right? That has nothing to do with the war. That's possible. In my country, that's certainly possible. B, maybe you're missing because you were killed by the attack that Hamas did. Thank you, Maddie. Right? And nobody's found your body yet. Maybe you're in a hospital and you didn't have an ID on you and they haven't identified you yet. Right? So basically, the number of hostages keeps changing because either they find somebody who they thought was a hostage and they found the person dead, which has happened recently, by the way, or they thought somebody was dead or missing or whatever, and finally a hostage video is released or something from Hamas that shows. But as I said, recently, there was somebody that they actually, I know the one I'm thinking of. Remember, there was a CNN story. Thank you, H63 Tom. There was a CNN story at the beginning of the war. Thank you, Adventurers, for the gifts. And the father who was interviewed, do you remember this? His little daughter looked like she was 3 years old or something, curly yellow, blonde hair. And CNN is interviewing the father and says, he says, when I found out, I didn't know where my daughter was. I didn't know what happened to her. I knew that the kibbutz was attacked where she was at or wherever she was, and I didn't know what happened to her. And when I found out that they found her dead body, that she was dead, I said, yes. And you're watching it going, what? And he says, because I could not live knowing that my little girl was being held by these people, not knowing where she was, not knowing what's going on. I would, and knowing the way they treat people. He just found out, according to the news the other day, that his daughter is actually a hostage. They didn't know she was a hostage. They thought she was dead. So this is why the numbers keep changing, because now if I were Israeli, I'd be a little pissed, frankly, that the numbers keep changing to some degree. Thank you, H63. But, for whatever reason, it's still not very precise trying to figure this out. In any case, so there's negotiations going on. The head of the CIA, Mossad, either head or the representative, which is Israel's CIA, is the Mossad. They are in Qatar, negotiating with the government there. Qatar has great relations with Hamas. The Hamas leader is in exile there, or not exile, but he's living there because he's safe there, and to negotiate the release of the hostages. There hasn't really been much progress, but there was an announcement today by Palestinian Islamic Jihad They are yet another terrorist group operating out of Gaza. They're the group that most experts think shot the missile or the rocket that misfired and then came down on the hospital that killed all those people that everybody was blaming Israel. But now we know it was pretty much the Palestinian terrorists who did it. Thank you, Anna. That's Palestinian Islamic Jihad. So the same group here, by the way, this is interesting too. The same group, for some reason, is holding hostages. It's not clear why they're holding hostages, but they have some of the hostages too from that day. They announced today, they released video of two of the hostages and said they're going to release them. The two hostages are a 77-year-old woman and a 13-year-old boy. The woman is in a wheelchair. The boy is just 13. Listen to this. They claim they're going to release them, the old lady for medical reasons and the boy for humanitarian reasons and for his young age. Now, let's be clear about something. These guys blew apart grannies and babies. They murdered, they slaughtered old people and babies. They burned babies. I don't want to go through all the gross list, but the notion that, we have an elderly Jewish woman or whatever she is, we must let her go. We would never want to hold an old lady hostage. They freaking murdered old ladies 3 weeks ago, right? It's absolute BS. And the notion that a 13-year-old boy, Palestinian Islamic Jihad will do many bad things, but they would never hold a 13-year-old boy hostage. Well, you're happy to kill babies. You're happy to slaughter 13-year-old boys. I mean, it's absolutely, and by the way, they've got babies hostage, and we've got the videos of the babies hostage, by the way, because for all the trolls claiming fake, there are videos that the Hamas themselves released showing the Hamas soldiers. I showed you guys this, I think, at the beginning of the attacks, showing the Hamas soldiers holding the babies and holding 3-year-old boys and bouncing them and la, 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 la. So again, the note that basically they're BSing, guys. Thank you, Metal More. I think, interestingly enough, they are trying to continue the charm offensive so that the world, because right now a lot of the world's pissed at Israel. A lot of the world has pretty much forgotten why this war is happening. Right? Israel's killing civilians, they don't care. They don't think about why it all started. That's good for Hamas at this point. And I think Hamas is trying to keep that going by Islamic Jihad. They're allied with Hamas anyway, by, again, slowly trickling out the hostages. But there is zero reason that these guys would release two hostages for humanitarian reasons. They just kill them. I mean, there's no reason. It's a lie. It's a total lie. In any case, weird story. And finally, 695 foreign passport holders and dependents were able to leave Gaza today via the Rafah crossing in the south. As you may recall, when the war broke out, whatever you want to call it, October 7th, there were 5,000 to 7,000 foreign nationals, people that were not Palestinians, living or visiting Gaza, and Hamas refused to let them leave. Basically, was keeping them as human shields, as human shields, basically, and hostages. They were using them as bargaining chips. They have now been releasing 300, 500, 600 a day. I don't know what the number is now. They might already be up to maybe 2,000 of the 5,000 to 7,000 that have been released, which is good. All right. That's it for the Israel news, as I was telling you guys. It was still a good half hour. We've got a lot more of the Ukraine news. As always, let me do a quick pitch. Please do keep the gifts coming on TikTok and YouTube and elsewhere. I do this for free, as I said, and it allows me to keep doing it because your guys' gifts help me pay the bills. So please do keep them coming if you like the show. And if you can afford it. If you can't afford it, I understand. But if you can afford it, consider the gifts. Or honestly, a simple way of doing it too is on TikTok, you can go, thank you, Marie. You can go to my profile, click the Linktree link, and you'll find my PayPal, my Venmo, my Cash App, all sorts of stuff. Thank you, Mamazan. So you can do that. You can also go and you can subscribe on TikTok, become a subscriber, a monthly subscriber to my work. You can find that link in my profile on TikTok. It just says TikTok subscription, I believe. YouTube, you guys can do it. All the wonderful green named folks on YouTube who are supporting me. Thank you, Flower Lady. So anyway, lots of ways you guys can help. Thank you, Dawn. Appreciate it. Let's do sip of water and then let's do Ukraine. So I said, there's a lot of the trolls are droll. The trolls are drolls. There's a lot of Ukraine news today. Oh, and of course, I did try to put some videos up right before I started the show. And what do you think happened? TikTok did it again. They threw music on my videos. Oh, engineer, 20-something engineer over at YouTube. That's the other thing. The other day I found out TikTok, idiot TikTok, defaults to turning music on your video, but they don't tell you. And if you don't listen, you don't realize they put music on your video. And the best part is the music isn't even subtle. It's too loud so you can't hear the person, which of course is idiotic. Why would you put it too loud that you can't hear the person? So I already put up one video today about the war in Ukraine, and it's got some ridiculous, it might as well have Taylor Swift singing or something. I mean, so I had to delete it. Anyway, it's very, very, very annoying. Engineers are very bad people. Very bad people. It's crazy though. All right. Anyway, all right, let's get rolling here. So it is day 623 of Vladimir Putin's special 3-day military operation in Ukraine. There was a really nice sort of summary on where things are from, I would say where things are, and also kind of a hopeful look from Sean Bell, who's one of the military analysts over at Sky News. Let me just sort of summarize what he was talking about here, okay? He says the winter rains have begun, by the way, which is interesting because that was something that you guys have been asking a lot. When do the winter rains start in Ukraine? Now, why does this matter? Because once the rains start, everything gets muddy and it becomes very difficult to move your tanks and any kind of vehicles. Actually, moving troops is not easy too through the mud, but tanks and everything, very difficult. You end up having to go on the roads because if you go through a field, you get stuck. And if you go on the road, what happens? You're on the road, you're single file, and there's no tree coverage, there's nothing else, and the Russians can see you and bomb you. So it's an incredibly dangerous way to have to proceed. The rains have finally begun, so that problem has started now until things freeze over, and then you can drive over stuff. So the winter rains have arrived. Russia continues to throw its forces. Thank you, Pascal. Russia continues to throw its forces into the fight for Avdiivka, suffering huge casualties as a result. Avdiivka, one second here. You may recall. Thank you. Who's that? Metalmore, was it? Anyway, I saw Metal. Oh, Metalmore. It's Metalmore. Avdiivka is over here northwest of Donetsk. Donetsk is a Ukrainian city occupied by the Russians. Avdiivka is right north here. The Russians are going crazy trying to take this town. Not entirely clear why. I mean, I guess, thank you, Dinan. They don't want the Ukrainians to hold it because it gives the Ukraine an advantage for eventually moving south, which the Russians don't want. But they've still been putting a lot of men and a lot of equipment, kind of like but they're doing it kind of in the crazy way they've done it before. In terms of what they were doing in Bakhmut, they wasted way too many men and way too much equipment and ammunition going after Bakhmut. In any case, they're doing it again in Donetsk. They're suffering huge casualties, which is good news. Russia is also intensifying its attacks across Ukraine, according to Bell. On November 3rd, Russia conducted its biggest series of attacks against Ukraine since the start of the conflict. Russia struck 118 Ukrainian towns and cities in 24 hours. That number kind of blew my mind. 118 towns and cities in 24 hours, which included 10 of Ukraine's 27 regions. The Dnipro, so this area is right south of the river here. You will recall that Russia controls Crimea and the area south of the river, and then over here, and then kind of up here. So east, south, along the river, and then down here, okay? South of the river, so Ukraine, I mean, this is all Ukraine, but Ukraine controls north of the river. Right south of the river, there's been some interesting stuff going on the last few weeks, maybe a month, of the Ukrainians trying to form a little bit of a beachhead. They've got some troops south of there. They seem to have been holding on to it, and they're trying to build. It seems like they've either added 300 troops or they now have 300 troops, but they're trying to build here because eventually, if they can move south, it's really dangerous to Russia because the big jewel in the crown is Crimea. Ukraine wants all of its territory back, but Crimea is the one that Putin really wants, that he really wants to hold. And if Ukraine can threaten Crimea, then they might be in a position to really have some real negotiation with Russia. Now, How do you threaten Crimea? Well, if you come down here and come all the way down here, what do? You've cut off Crimea from the rest of the Russian occupation. That's very good. So, little bit of an update on what's been going on south of the river. Dnipro, although the river still presents, thank you, Triff, for those. The river still presents a difficult challenge for the Ukrainians to cross. There are reports that Ukraine has some infantry fighting vehicles and around 300 soldiers, okay, it is 300, are now established on the eastern bank of the river, which is the southern east, but meaning the southern bank of the river. If Ukraine is able to capitalize and create a more robust beachhead, this will effectively bypass the multi-layered Russian defenses to the east of Zaporizhia and could prove decisive. What he means is the big fighting we kept hearing about, where Ukraine, at least initially in the counteroffensive, had some good success, was here in Zaporizhia, where they're coming south here, eventually perhaps trying to get to Melitopol so they could cut the Russian occupation in half like this. That has slowed down a lot now. What he's saying is, if Ukraine were able to build up a larger beachhead here of troops and come down south, they would be able to cut the Russian occupation in half without going through all the horrific Russian defenses that are over here, right? The landmines, all that stuff we've been reading about. The Russians didn't put as much here because the river was a natural barrier. Well, the river became less of a barrier. What? And when? When Russia blew up the dam around the river. So blowing up the dam kind of screwed things up for the Russians. It presents Ukraine with an opportunity, not a guarantee they're going to do this, but Sean Bell of Sky News is saying this could be interesting for Ukraine if they're able to build up anything around there. Thank you, Andre. Yeah, that's about it. And that if they were able to come down, thank you, Kronos, if they were able to come down further, they'd cut the Russian occupation in half. Let me see. What else have I got here? Yeah, I'll stop with that. A counterpoint from the Czech president today. So the Czech president was, he's president though, isn't he president, Pavel? Straighten me out, Czech people. Am I forgetting this now? I think he's president. You guys confuse me with your presidents and prime ministers. Pavel, is he president and not prime minister? I hope so. I hope so. My good looks, Rolando, my dashing good looks. He's president. Okay. The president of the Czech Republic, who is a former general, also a very dashing man as well, just like me. He gave an interview kind of not very happy about what's going on in Ukraine, but honestly, as I've told you guys, I tell you the truth, so we're going to give you the truth. Hey, Susanna. He says developments on the battlefield do not indicate that Ukraine can gain the upper hand militarily. He said this at a security conference on the 9th, which would be today, quoted in the Czech papers. He says, time now favors Russia, which has a stronger base to mobilize human resources. By gaining time, Russia may be able to replace the massive amount of materials it has lost already, especially with the help of North Korea, he added. What he means by that is, the Russian economy, I mean, we've been putting sanctions on the Russian economy. Thank you, Lizard and Kate both. We've been putting sanctions on the Russian economy. Thank you again, Lizard. But they can still create weapons and they can still build more drones. They can build more missiles. They can build more tanks. It goes slowly, right? It's going to take them time. But the point is, over time, they can build more. Ukraine had to get most of its weapons. I mean, they had their own weapons to start with, but most of the weapons since then have been Western weapons going over to, at least a lot of them have been Western weapons. Will those keep coming to the same degree as Russia can just keep building them? So what he's saying is over time serves the Russians here. He says Russia is clearly aware of the time factor and seeks to prolong the war as long as possible and at least until the U.S. presidential election next year. Now, good story, says I'm going to mix the good and the bad here. Wall Street Journal had an interesting story talking about how the Russians are basically desperate for weapons. And they're so desperate that they have now gone and they're approaching the people who they normally sell their weapons to and trying to buy their weapons back. They've approached Pakistan, Egypt, Belarus, and Brazil. The Egyptians, unfortunately, agreed to help the Russians. This is the kind of thing where, I mean, I hope to God, and I doubt he did, that the Biden administration came down on the Egyptians like a ton of bricks, but I'll bet you they didn't, which is very annoying. The Egyptians agreed to sell back 150 engines from Russian helicopters back to the Russians to basically help the Russians get more helicopters, which is really bad. And the helicopters are really bad too, because the Russians have been using their helicopters to go after Ukrainian troops on the front lines, etc. So that sucks, Egypt. And we've been giving Egypt a lot of money too, by the way. In other cases, the Russians have basically stopped or cut back significantly on their sales of arms abroad so they can use the arms at home, which was interesting. They've done this with Armenia and India, for starters. This was a really good story. Okay, so here's a funny story. See, mixing it up, the bad news, the good news, the funny news. Now we got the funny news. This comes via Institute for the Study of War. Russian commanders have been using the wrong maps in Ukraine, bad maps, and they know they're bad maps, but they insist on continuing to do it, which cracks me up entirely. According to Institute for the Study of War, Russian military bloggers have claimed that Russian commanders may be making key decisions during the war using battlefield maps that differ from tactical reality. ISW is a big defense think tank here in Washington, D.C. that I quote a lot because they're very good, and they've been following what's been going on in Ukraine, but also they're following what's going on with Gaza and Israel as well. Check them out, the Institute for the Study of War. They're very good, very independent. They're just sort of good, smart defense people. ISW says one blogger made the claim in response to another who queried why Russian forces were not targeting apparent large Ukrainian force concentrations close to the front line. So basically, there were a lot of Ukrainian troops near the front line with the Russians, and the Russians weren't attacking them. And the one blogger asked the other why, and was told because they're using the wrong maps. Well, this gets even better. I don't even, the way they explained it was a little bad. I know what the answer, I'm going to see if I can read this to you. Otherwise, I'm just going to explain it. Yeah, okay, listen to this. They said Russian troops on the front lines have access to the real map. So they do have access to the good map, but the commanders order them to conduct routine assaults to make gains that align the real map with the incorrect one. So in other words, and I'll tell you why I'll tell you why first. The reason they're doing this is because the Russian officers, the commanders, are incentivized to use the bad map because the bad map came from the guys above. So if you want to show the guys that you're doing what they asked you to, you've got to show them on the bad map, right? Think about it. I mean, let's pretend this is the bad map, okay? And the bad map shows an incredible concentration of Ukrainian troops over here, right? Over here. And there's, oh my God, 100,000, I'm exaggerating here, but 100,000 Ukrainian troops. And your commander gives it to you and says, or your general, well, you better do something about it. You better attack those 100,000 Ukrainian troops. You look at the map and go, there aren't 100,000 Ukrainian troops here. I'm not sending my Russian troops here to fight them. We need the Russian troops fighting over here. Well, if you send the Russian troops over here and report it on the bad map, the bad map is going to say, all the Ukrainian troops are here, and you idiot commander, you sent the troops here. So you have to basically send them to the bad place on the bad map so you can show the higher ups and go, aha, you know how we had 100,000 Ukrainians here, even though we didn't. I sent 50,000 of the Russian troops here to fight them. Aren't you proud of me? Is that hilarious? I mean, they're using bad maps and they know they are because they want to get credit. I mean, again, that is, one thing that could save Ukraine, knock on wood, is just how screwed up the Russians are. But let's hope. I mean, it sounds a lot like communism. I mean, this is the kind of crazy stuff that would happen when Russia was the Soviet Union and when it was communist, and all the crazy incentives for corruption. Because if you did it, if you did it your own way, you'd get, what is the expression about the lone nail gets slammed down. There's some expression like that, but basically that nobody wants to be the nail sticking up, because if you're the nail sticking up, the hammer will come and knock you down. All right, a little bit more here really quick. This was good from the U.S. today. Listen to this. Thank you, Stevie Boy, for the TikTok gift. The roughly $300 billion in Russian assets that have been frozen by Ukraine's allies in the West will not be returned until Moscow pays for Ukraine's reconstruction. Assistant Secretary of State for European and Eurasian Affairs James O'Brien said at a U.S. Senate hearing on November 8th. Assistant Secretary is pretty high up, which is good. It's rather high up. It is very high up. Let's hope the Biden administration holds to this. I'm not convinced they will, because again, doesn't want to anger Vladimir Putin. But if that's true, that would be great, because that is some major leverage we have over the Russians. We've got, again, we haven't taken their money. We've frozen the money. We don't own the money, but we've frozen it so the Russians can't get access to it. That's a good incentive, but let's see if Biden holds to it. And finally, the European Union is looking for a way to continue a new aid package to Ukraine over Hungary's objections. Hungary, you will recall, is, well, kind of a Russian puppet, really, in terms of the government. Certainly is. The government loves Putin, hates Ukraine, and kind of bitchy about the West, bitchy about NATO, bitchy about the European Union. I swear to God, he pines for the good old days of the Soviet Union and when Hungary was communist. But the plan that they're doing is the member states are looking at whether they can raise money on like the open market, I guess like loans and things like that, in order to help finance Ukraine. So kind of cool if they can, but thank you, Janice. But good to see that they're actually trying to figure out what they can do to help Ukraine if Hungary throws a wrench in, which Hungary will throw a wrench in. Anyway, all right, let's go to our questions. I don't have the auctions. I do have one auction or two auctions set up. I've got to get more set up on our Discord. Since I'm flying out on Saturday, I've been a little slow on that, but I've got some more Christmas ornaments hand painted in Ukraine that are on Discord. They're very pretty. I don't have them. They're already packed up because I've got to send them to Chicago, so I can't show them to you guys, but do check out our auctions over there. It's discord.aravosis.com. It's our Discord community, and it's quite fun, and we hang out a lot, so do go check it out. Anyway, let's do Q&A. I'm burping my dinner. Bad me. Let's do our Q&A with you guys now. Israel, Ukraine, whatever you want to talk about. Please do keep the gifts coming on TikTok and YouTube. I appreciate it. I help support my work. And let's talk. Out of the loop, what's happening with Ukraine? What word is there on Putin's health? Nothing, Stevie. Absolutely nothing on Putin's health. Keeps being rumors. Thank you, Timothy. Thank you, Chezak. Appreciate that. Keeping rumors about Putin's health, but there's been nothing real. It's always been rumors. It's been, a Telegram channel, a social media channel that blah, 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 that somebody says Putin's sick. And it's like, who knows? Who knows? Truth says, is Israel going too far in its response? Well, depends, I guess. On one hand, you could certainly say yes because of all the civilian casualties. On the other hand, and this is a point I bring up, what should Israel be doing otherwise? Right? And the problem you get with that is, I think a lot of the answers are unrealistic. I've not heard a realistic answer yet as to what should Israel do. And I doubt we're going to see it on TikTok tonight because we never do. What should they do otherwise? And, die is not exactly, I mean, this isn't Independence Day. What do you want from us? Die. The alien says to Commander Data or to the president. You've got to give a real answer that a real government can do. A real, what can a government do after 1,400 people have been slaughtered? The government has to do something. Like I said, in America, that's only 10 million people in Israel. In America, that would be like 46,000 people being slaughtered in one day. Okay. And 6,000 hostages taken would be comparable for us. If that happens, we would be blowing the crap out of somebody if that happened. And the people would be demanding it. So the answer is, what do you do otherwise? And I have not seen a really good answer as far as what Israel should do otherwise. Thank you, Jay Masick. I'm not saying there isn't something, but I haven't seen anybody give the answer. Now, you could say negotiate and all of that. Part of the problem there, though, is, Israel comes out with a peace proposal in response to a massacre. Politically, I don't think any country could do that. No, wrong answer. You're all giving the wrong answers on TikTok again. You can't do it. You've got to give, if you can't, let me put it this way. All they're saying these are some of the people on TikTok, but don't kill children for starters. That's not an answer. That's not an adult answer. I want an adult answer. I want to pretend you're an adult. Thank you, Cheryl. And you're mature. Okay. If you want a country to do something, you need to tell that country something it can do. Don't give a bullshit answer about don't kill children. That's stupid. Give a real answer. They've been attacked. They've been brutalized. It is equal to 46,000 people being murdered in America. Okay. In France, what would it be in France? You've got 60, 80,000, right? I mean, you could figure out what it would be, whether it's 12,000 for you or 15,000. No, actually, no. It would be, make it times 6. For you guys, it would be like 8 to 10,000 civilians killed. If that happened, you'd be blowing something up. You need to tell them, what can they do? The public demands they do something. What can they do? You've got to give a real answer. You can't, I'm really serious about this. This problem, now, first of all, most of you have nothing to do with the conflict, so you're not going to be able to help solve it anyway. Thank you, Simon. I mean, in a way, your opinion doesn't matter in that sense, because, it's not helpful, but you're not negotiators anyway. Roy, go for it if you're from Israel. What can, and I say, what politically can they do that the Israeli people won't rise up and go, what do you mean? Just let's pull out of the occupied territories entirely, right? That's difficult in response to it, they just slaughtered everybody, because you'd be looking like you're caving. You just can't, politically, you can't do it. Thank you, Simon. So that's anyway, let's see if you've got an answer, anybody else does. But again, most of the folks don't have an answer, which is interesting to me. And it's always been interesting on this issue. People don't actually have realistic answers they can give you, and they've got to give you one, because otherwise, thank you, Trilytic, otherwise it's the is it Occam? It's not Occam's, it's the Spock thing of, what was it like? If what's the quote I'm looking for, guys? Isn't it Spock, I think, where if a solution looks like unusual or something, or kind of unlikely, but you've already eliminated all the possible solutions, or a cause. If a cause of something, you're trying to figure out the cause of something, and you've got one possible cause, but it sounds kind of crazy. But you've gone through all the other likely causes and you've eliminated. This is Sherlock Holmes. I'm of course subscribing it to Star Trek. It's Sherlock Holmes. It's not the simplest answer. It's the other one. This is the Sherlock Holmes thing, where basically the thing that looks less likely, you need to consider once you've considered all the likely things, and they're not it. And this is sort of the same thing in reverse. Okay. If you're going to say, and by the way, you might be right, that killing this many civilians is unacceptable, then what is the more acceptable solution that can still be done by a government, by a sovereign state? And nobody's been able to give me a good answer on that. And you just can't. No one, I mean, literally, what I always sort of presented is, you should be presenting, you're presenting to the government. You get to talk to the Israeli prime minister and give him a solution to what he should be doing in response to this. What do you do? What do you do? I don't know what you mean by Roy sent a request. I'm not bringing up anybody to speak, because I don't know you guys. I can't do that. Right? But you've got to give an answer to a government of what they can do politically, what they can and should do. And if you can't give an answer, then they're going to do what they're doing, because you're admitting there isn't anything else that can be done. That's the problem. That's the problem here. So, I think that's it. When you've eliminated the impossible, whatever remains, however improbable, must be true. And that's perfect. Thank you for that, Tammy. And I'm applying that to politics in this sense, or war, or whatever you want, what else you want to say, where basically, if something is unthinkable, the action in war is unthinkable, but you've already eliminated all the thinkable things and they don't work, then what do you do? And what I'm hearing from you guys is, you're not giving other solutions for what Israel can do here, but you expect Israel not to do this, but you won't tell them what that is that they could do. You simply say, well, just don't do this. Well, that's not an answer. That's not an answer. And by the way, Jen raises a good point too. No one ever calls for Hamas to surrender. That's a good point. That's a good point. Why doesn't Hamas just surrender? Hamas could end it right now. Surrender, right? Thank you, user 334. I mean, Israel is invading Gaza to take out Hamas, remove them from power, take away their weapons. Well, Hamas could do it right now. Leave Gaza, throw down your weapons and leave Gaza. The war is over, right? Israel will work with the U.S. and the UN and the Arab governments to put basically the U.S. has already said they want the Palestinian Authority to take over, which makes sense anyway, because they should be the ones in charge, like they are in the West Bank. Why isn't Hamas stepping down? Right? And why isn't anybody calling for Hamas to step down? Nobody's calling. But and I mean, what Janet said, nobody's even asking them to. Everyone's pissed. And again, you maybe have a right to be pissed at Israel. But what's interesting to me is how people are pissed at Israel. They're not that pissed at Hamas. They're not pissed at all at Hamas. That's weird. I think that's weird. But in any case, but my point is, as I said, is if you don't like what Israel's doing, then you better propose something else. Hamas is a state. Of course they are. Of course they are. There's no difference. Hamas is a state. Israel isn't. That's a distinction without a difference. But Gaza, for all intents and purposes, is a country, and its government is Hamas. It's a small country, but it's a country. Doesn't matter what you call it. Thank you, Mustard. Doesn't matter if it's officially a country or not. It's just like any other country in the region, and it's got a bad government, which, by the way, just like any country in the region, they've got a bad government that doesn't represent the people. Welcome to the Middle East, right? As far as that goes. But the distinction just doesn't matter. I don't think there's a possibility of a third world war, because a third world war typically means America, Russia, and China. And China has no reason to get involved in a war in the Middle East. And Russia, why? I mean, maybe they worry about Iran, but because they want Iran because Iran's helping them in Ukraine. But otherwise, Russia can't afford to get into another war. But this is the problem. I mean, Fred raised a good point, but I'm going to counterpoint. Fred said, I don't believe anyone expects Israel to avoid any civilian casualties. That does seem unfeasible. However, I think it's absolutely fair to expect them to try their best to keep it to a minimum. Fair enough. But my response to that would be, how do you know they're not? M. Fuller. Thank you, M. Fuller, for the gift. Meaning, what attack should Israel have done otherwise? Right? How could they go after Hamas otherwise that wouldn't have killed, that is effective and wouldn't have killed as many civilians? That's what I'm trying to get at. And I have not, even with the U.S. complaining, I still have not heard anybody give a detailed, Israel is doing this and this and this, and they ought to go in and do this and this and this, and they're not doing it. That'd be a good answer, right? But you'll notice no one's given us that answer. I mean, no one's given us that answer. I've not heard anybody go, well, actually, Israel should be doing A, B, C, and they're doing D, E, F instead, right? They're using this bomb instead of this bomb, right? They're right. I mean, that's what bothers me. I mean, not blaming it on you, but I'm saying it should bother all of us that no one is giving an answer here. And I just would like to have an answer, fair enough. I mean, Callum says there's no chance they're taking due regard for civilian casualties. And I trust Callum because he's a friend, and B, he's a former British military, so he knows stuff. But I still would love to know, Callum, like what kind of attacks they're making and what the alternative is. Like we said, if in fact they're going after Hamas, if Hamas is in tunnels underground in civilian areas, what are your alternatives for going after them? You know what I mean? That's the question I've got. And I've just not heard that. In any case. Yeah, but Gunther, that's not, I agree with you, Gunther, but at the same time, that's not an answer. Because if you expect the government to be better and there's nothing the government can do, it's not an answer. Because Gunther says, just because regular people aren't experts in military conflict, which is fair enough, doesn't mean we don't expect our government to do better. Sure, but your expectation may be unreal is my point. If there isn't anything better that can be done, the expectation is unreal. That's my point. And I want to hear some experts tell me what could be done better. And I'm not hearing it from experts. I'm not saying you guys. I'm not hearing it from experts either. Okay, Annette is weighing in. Israel should not be using airstrikes, only special tactical boots on the ground teams, including NATO teams. Well, NATO's not going to go. I mean, you think NATO would go in? When you say NATO teams, do you mean actually like NATO teams on the ground with the Israelis? I can't imagine that happening. Not yet. Now, boots on the ground, they do have boots on the ground now, but I think they wanted to try to take out some of the, obviously the commanders and everything else before they go in. Like now I was reading right now, 14-year-old boy, I think was killed is it Jenna? Maybe. I think Jenna, is that in Gaza? There was a town, something like Jenna. And the boy was killed because they're in the town and they are going block to block, house to house in the town. Jenin, thank you. And the boy was killed because the Israeli troops are literally shooting and getting shot at by Hamas in the town. Like they're going with strategic groups in the town. But also NATO, I can't imagine NATO going in and doing this. I mean, the U.S. isn't going to do it unless Israel is literally in danger of being wiped out. Then the U.S. is going to send in troops. But I don't see the U.S. doing it unless that happens. Kirk says he doesn't think NATO has special forces capabilities. Well, I mean, NATO may not, but NATO countries do. The U.S. does, right? The Brits have special forces. I mean, right? Even if, you know what I mean? Even if NATO doesn't, I think her point is NATO would, under a NATO aegis or whatever, you would do it, right? Right? NATO would say, yes, let's do this. And we'll send forces from the US, Britain, Norway, I don't know, Sweden, whoever, you know, maybe not Sweden. They're not NATO. We're hoping for Sweden. Your thoughts on Russia's nuclear submarine testing? I did see that today, 6 Evo. I didn't care. You know me. I saw it. I was like, Russia tested a ICBM or whatever on a nuclear submarine today. And it was like, yeah, they tested a nuclear missile. Big deal. You know, I mean, my response to that is our nuclear weapons on our submarines would destroy Russia if they attacked us. Yes, I mean, the experts should care because we always want to make sure that our systems are as good as their systems and all of that. But generally speaking, I don't care. You know what I mean? Because this is part of Putin doing the crazy thing again. Oh, I have nukes. This is Putin going, I have nukes. And it's like, yeah, so do we. So do the Brits and the French. So what? So does Israel, for that matter. So, you know, you know my answer on this. Putin's trying to scare you. Don't let him do it. Don't let him do it. Daniel, NATO is a small office, an agreement, a piece of paper. Yeah, but it's so much more. It's so much more. UN peacekeeping? Ugh. I mean, UN peacekeeping forces aren't going to do anything, though. You know, UN peacekeeping isn't going to do anything, though. You know, we don't know what percentage of those killed are Hamas. I did read today that what we suspected is true, that Hamas is giving the overall numbers, including their own fighters who were killed, but we don't know. I think from what we're hearing that, you know, the overwhelming majority of that 10,000 is civilians. I mean, that nobody seems to be disagreeing with that, even though we don't know the exact number because they are adding the Hamas guys in there. You know, I wouldn't, you know, having said that, I wouldn't be surprised if there's several thousand Hamas, or several thousand, certainly several hundred Hamas guys dead now, but is it really 3,000-4,000? I kind of feel like if it were, Israel would say it were, you know, I mean, I don't know that I believe the 10,000 anyway, to be honest. I mean, this U.S. Assistant Secretary today said that she thinks it could be more. I mean, maybe. I will say there are certainly a lot of civilian casualties because we're hearing about them, right? I mean, we know people that that Palestinian journalist family got killed. I mean, there's a number of people who know people that are at least of people of a known commodity like that journalist. Thank you, Courtney. Where we know he's real and we know he's clearly not lying about his wife and children getting killed, right? So that I think there's, I don't know that we know the number, but I also don't know that it matters. And what I mean is it doesn't change the calculus, which is that a lot of civilians are dying. And we need to figure out if there's a way of cutting that back, right? No matter whether it's 10,000 or 6,000, it still is too many. Thank you, Joe. But again, if we could, Israel was a blacklisted word. It's not anymore. No, I had to black. You're going to like this on Israel because of all the doing Ukraine. All these months, we've been covering Ukraine since March of 2022, and I had to ban the word Israel on YouTube because all the crazy Russian trolls would come and try to start stuff about Israel. And I don't know why, but they would just start to go after Israel. And it was bizarre, like unrelated to Ukraine at all. So I forgot that I had the word Israel banned on my YouTube chat until this happened and people were trying to write and it wasn't letting them post their messages. So yes, it's working now. Yes. but it was like a crazy thing. I had to be the Russians doing it, just stirring the pot like they do, you know. Reuters and AP journalists were embedded with Hamas on October 7th. No, there's no way. There's zero chance that was happening. Zero. I mean, there's no way. You're thinking different thing Max is saying. Max is talking about something different. Thank you, by the way. Who is that? Jeremy for the hearts. Max is saying BBC had a paid journalist who was part of the Hamas attack. Not exactly if you're talking about the same thing I'm thinking of. What happened was Stooge. Let's wait. It may have, give me 1 second, Stooge, and I'll look to see if it may have popped up. Hang on. What I know about that was there is a photographer that the BBC and the AP, Associated Press, were using who got his picture taken with the head of Hamas, and the head of Hamas is giving him a kiss on the cheek and he's laughing. The thing is, I don't know the rest of the story. So I'm not going to say it's not a story, but you know, you're a journalist and somebody you're covering comes up to be funny and kisses you. That's not your fault, right? So I don't know enough about what actually happened, but all I saw was that was there and BBC let him go. And I think AP is probably going to let him go, but there may be more to the story. I just wanted to bring it up that there may be more to it because I didn't look at, after I saw that, I didn't kind of look into it. But the day of the attack, yeah, I'll have to see. Maybe there was more. Maybe there was more. No, that's not what's going on. The Israelis were not paying people $250 to show up. They had I know this story. See, don't troll me on stuff and think you're going to get away with it. The Jewish groups were providing travel subsidies for people who couldn't afford to travel down to DC. So they had up to $250 that you could apply for to help pay for your plane ticket, your train ticket, and everything else. So, try to spin me. So let me see here. You're right. It didn't go through, Stooge. It didn't go through. Sorry. Was that the one that although you had long stuff on Discord, so I'm not sure what, I've still got if that's from you, I think again, I've got another long one I've got to read through. Brendan, I don't know about that. Thank you. Brendan's saying it's the same thing. AP and Reuters photographer embedded with Hamas October 7th. Let me read this. Let me Google this while you're saying this. That's crazy. Let me see. Reuters embedded Hamas. Let's see what this says. Nope. I've got Hamas. Hamas isn't going to cut it. Hamas. Well, Reuters denied on Thursday suggestions by media advocacy group Honest Reporting that it and other international news organizations had prior knowledge of the attack. The Israeli government demanded explanations from Reuters and 3 other news groups regarding an article from an advocacy group which questioned their work with Gaza-based photojournalists during the Hamas attack. Honest Reporting, which describes itself on its website as a charitable organization with a mission to said it was not accusing Reuters of collusion but raising ethical questions. Reuters categorically denies that it had prior knowledge of the attack. Okay. Reuters acquired photographs from 2 Gaza-based freelance photographers who were at the border on the morning of October 7th, with whom it did not have a prior relationship. The photos published by Reuters were taken 2 hours after Hamas fired rockets across southern Israel and more than 45 minutes after Israel said gunmen crossed the border. Reuters staff journalists were not on the ground at the location. Okay. What I'm reading here, it still gets a little creepy, is Reuters and the other news media may have turned to photojournalists they'd never worked with before who said, oh my God, I've got photos of the attack or the border right after the attack or whatever. And what it actually was these people could have been given a head up by Hamas, not Reuters, but the photojournalist could have been given a heads up by Hamas and to be there and get photos. And then the photojournalist approached Reuters and AP and everybody said, oh, look, I've got photos. And Reuters said, oh my God, that's great. Except they didn't realize possibly this photojournalist knew about the attack and whatever, which is really creepy. So yeah, let's find out more before we hang the guy. Let's find out more. But I admit on its face, it's interesting. Also, if you think about it, Reuters' denial isn't a total denial. Reuters says it did not know of the attack. We never worked with this guy before. He wasn't a Reuters photojournalist, right? So Reuters is saying, we didn't know, none of our staff was there. We just bought a photo from a guy who was there, but it looks like they might have bought a photo from Hamas is the possibility, which is really creepy. So interesting. Okay. I had not read the rest of the story. That's very interesting. Okay. I mean, I read the stuff on Friday. I did read the stuff on Friday, but there was you or somebody else followed through with a longer response, which I still have to read. Maybe it wasn't you then. I thought it was. Let me look here. Okay. I've got the other questions you guys asked. Oh, what else, guys? What else? Oh, excuse me. What else, guys? What else? Hello, social. It was AP too. Oh, I'm sure they approached all the media guys. Yeah, all the media networks, right? I'm sure, absolutely. Israel isn't paying me anything to make my voice, and they really should. So, if you know somebody there, tell them they should be buying gifts. And my PayPal is in my bio on TikTok. Feel free to check it out. PayPal, Venmo, and Cash App. I am more than happy. Somebody in Israel wants to give me some money to keep reporting. I am happy to take it. So thanks for bringing it up. I'm actually an unpaid shill, but I'm happy to be a paid shill is what I'm actually saying. Currently, I'm an unpaid shill. So I just get gifts from you guys. If you want to keep giving gifts, please do. So I ask the hard questions. What do you do? All right. What else we got, guys? Anybody got stuff on Ukraine? That other topic? Thank you, Pesky. I do this I don't do it for money, but I do it for money. Thank you, Kronos and Alex and Johnny. I do this because I care about these issues, but I have to make money doing it because otherwise I'd be rich. And if I'm not rich, then I can't afford to do this. So I'm not rich. So therefore I try to do this. A news channel? The thing is, I've got too much of a background in politics and advocacy and stuff. I could never probably work for a news network. I mean, I could work as a commentator. I'd love to be I've done a lot of news in the past, but they don't pay unless they hire you full time, really. And I've done a lot of media in the past, but like CNN and even Fox News, but they usually don't pay. So you go, but they don't pay. For them to pay is a more difficult thing to get, and I've never been able to get a paid thing. But I couldn't be paid as a reporter because I've done too much partisan advocacy. Yeah, but I've done too much. I'd have to be one of the partisan people or something. You know what I mean? I've just done too much partisan work in the past, among other things. So, I mean, to be honest, I much prefer this. If I can make a living doing this, I much prefer this, because it's more fun. And I feel like it's more impactful in some ways, Do you think the U.S. will have a stronger military response against Iran? We might. They're playing games. I mean, the fact that stuff is still going on is not good. I mean, the U.S., bombed last night and then 2 or 4 more attacks today on U.S. troops in the Middle East. Not good. Iran needs to be careful. Thank you, Danan. Now, it's also possible maybe Iran just doesn't have as much control over its surrogates in the region, right? Like it's got some control, but not 100% control. Maybe the Young Turks. I can't stand the Young Turks, Stooge. I've known Sank forever, but I find them sensationalist and I don't like it. They're also, they try to pretend they're too far to the left. I don't know that they are, but they like to pretend they are. And I think they're kind of they're like Chapo. They're like the obnoxious far left. I find them obnoxious. Yeah, I really do. I mean, Sank running for president. Come on, Anyway, I think Iran. I mean, the thing with Iran is, if Iran draws the U.S. into the war, Ned, then we're bombing Iran. You know what I mean? Like that I think would be a bad thing for Iran if we started bombing Iran. Right? I mean, so that's the thing. Iran, I think, is trying to play a cute little game like the Russians do, where they do just enough to be obnoxious, but not enough for us to bomb them directly. Right? So they get their surrogates to attack us, But Iran itself doesn't quite attack our troops because that would be an act of war from Iran, and then we'd bomb Iran. So I think they're playing a game, I think, or they're just not able to control these guys. So who was that? Brock. Thank you, Brock. What else? They want to draw, but they don't want it to be them directly, just their allies. Yeah. Or they want to draw blood. That's exactly it. Thank you, Kronos. Yeah, that's exactly it. They want to harm Israel. They want to harm the US. They want to make it harder for us, but they don't want to do enough that they get blamed for it. Thank you, Brock. So they basically have their allies do it, and they get the allies money, to get the allies weapons, all that kind of stuff. Right? You know? Mamba, are you Israeli? Why don't you answer me first? Possibly a very anti-Semitic question, just so you know. Generally, we don't just ask random people if they're Israeli. It's a little weird. Because that's also a cute way of asking if you're Jewish too. So, no, the person asked me and said, "Are you Israeli?" I just think it's a little bit of a weird question to ask somebody broadcasting from Washington, D.C. Well, first of all, because it's possibly a way of asking somebody if they're Jewish, which is weird. But also, why would you assume I'm Israeli? Why not assume I'm Palestinian or something? Why not assume I'm Italian? It's just a weird question. Yeah. You know? What else? Yeah, his presidential bid's a little dubious, yes. Especially because he was born abroad. You know? Anyway, your spirit animal, that's good. Oh, what else, guys? Hey, Costa Rica. ¿Qué tal? I love Costa Rica because I like how you guys say Costa Rica. Like you use a bit of the American R. Actually, you almost use an Irish R when I've heard like Costa Ricans speak Spanish, because the Irish have got an R that's more like a R. It's a harsher R almost. And the Costa Ricans always crack me up as Costa Rica. Oh, who is that? Oh, Imperfecto. Thank you. Oh, beautiful gift. Wow. Oh, very cool. Thank you for now. I've got my microphone plugged in, so I couldn't hear. Did it roar as well? You guys would know if it roared. I'm guessing that thing roared. Did it roar? That was I could tell just because it was beautiful looking. You can always tell. I assumed it roared. Yeah, thank you so much. That's very cool. Thank you. Well, you can tell they sort of TikTok, like some of the gifts they TikTok, you can tell, has done like extra graphic stuff and everything else. Or growling. That's very cool. Anyway. Well, I can't hear it anyway, so I don't know if it was a roar or not. Anyway. No, well, supporting Hamas. I mean, first of all, it depends what you mean, Roy, by supporting Hamas. I mean, I think there's a lot of people who don't support Hamas, but they support the Palestinians, right? There's also a lot of weird people who support Hamas, and I just think they're kind of, what I mean is people in the West who support Hamas are just freaks, basically. And there are. Guys, there's a lot of bad people on the planet and a lot of stupid people on the planet. And unfortunately, thank you, Super Hornet, the internet has let us hear from them where normally we would not hear from them. I always said, like, before the internet, the only way you would hear from these people in the West who literally support Hamas, would be if they cut out big letters from newspapers and put them together with paste on a piece of paper, like a hostage letter. That's how you'd normally hear from these people. Now they're on the internet, and now they can organize all their friends to show up at protests and be like, we're for Hamas. Those people are nuts. The people protesting in general for the Palestinians are not nuts, right? A lot of those guys are normal. But the people actually claiming they support Hamas in the West are Looney Tunes people. I mean, they're just, I think they're just crazy people. So it depends what you mean by your question. You know what I mean? And I understand why a lot of people I shouldn't even say support the Palestinians, would be angry at Israel over these attacks. I understand that because of civilian casualties, you know? But, and again, probably because of my background in law and my background in foreign policy as well, I ask the question of, then what else should they do? And if somebody can't give me a good answer, I get less angry because I start to say, well, what's the alternative? You know, as I don't want to rehash that, but that was the discussion before. So it kind of depends. It kind of depends. Um, you know, you asked an AI what is the logical and fairest solution to end the Israeli-Hamas war, but did it tell you? Like a lot of these AIs aren't supposed to give you answers like that. I think they try to do I think Netanyahu will go peacefully after the war? I don't know. Thank you, Joe, for that. I mean, he reminds me of Trump in that way. He's going to go kicking and screaming. And by the way, when is after the war, right? 10 years from now? I mean, I did see some polls in Israel in the last few days that showed that like the largest number of Israelis want him to leave after the war. A smaller percentage, but still big, want him to leave now. But the larger number that want him to leave after the war. Netanyahu, the prime minister of Israel, which is interesting because that could be a while, Yeah, exactly. 10 years I can come visit. Well, thank you, Cassandra. I mean, Israel's been at war for 75 years. So, so what else is new? You know what I mean? I mean, it doesn't really stop you from visiting if it's safe. It just depends if it's safe. Anything else, guys? What else we got here? Yep. Wagner and Sudan. Yep. Fred says, how likely do you think it is that Trump will be reelected president? I think his reelection would be the biggest impact we've seen for the last 2 years in both conflicts, and I'm worried about it. Yeah, we could potentially kiss our democracy goodbye if Trump becomes president again, and that's not an exaggeration. Hey, Darian, he could win. I mean, look, the fact that he's popular in the Republican Party is insane with everything we know about Trump at this point. Voting for him the first time, fair enough. Everything the guy did in office, it's pretty sick. I'm sorry, but I think it really is. And too many of these people support him. And they support him after everything he did. He tried to violently overthrow the government. He sided with Vladimir Putin. He had secret meetings with Vladimir Putin and didn't let them keep notes. So we still don't know what Trump did in that secret meeting with Vladimir Putin. But he did come out publicly and say that he supported Putin over our own intelligence services who said Putin attacked the election, which he did. I mean, no, Trump is so freaking dangerous, it's not even funny. He's talking about invoking martial law on his first day in office. Trump is. They're talking about whether they should invoke the Insurrection Act, which basically says they can go and use the U.S. military on domestic soil, which is illegal, to arrest protesters because Trump is afraid there's going to be people protesting his election if he wins. The man is dangerous. He should be in prison for the rest of his life, and that would be generous to do that to him. I mean, he could absolutely win. He could absolutely win because we are a country, I think we are a world that a lot of people are not good people. They like to think they're good people, but they're really not, and they'd support somebody like him after everything they know about him. My God. You know what I mean? My God. At this point, I'm sorry. Now, I really do feel this. You vote for the man, you're not a good American at this point. You're really not. I mean, you don't care about democracy. You don't care about him being a pig, and he is. He's a human pig. But also just the democracy and everything he did. I don't care what you think of Biden. Biden's old and boring. Get over it. Fair enough. He's old and boring, but give me a break. That's the worst you can say about Biden. Inflation went up. That sucked. It's now down. Inflation's no longer a problem. The economy's doing great. Unemployment, ridiculously well. Economic growth, ridiculously well. Stimulus package. We got 2 stimulus packages. You got child tax credit from Biden. No, it just pisses me off because people just make up shit now. All they do is support their guy. And it's very whatever. It pisses me off. It really pisses me off. Anyway, don't get me talking about Trump. It's like talking about the United Nations. No, he's incredibly dangerous. And unfortunately, far too many people, the Republican Party overall, no longer cares about democracy. And they no longer care about America. And they've made that very clear. They don't care about religion. I mean, all the stuff they claim to guns, they still care about guns. I'll give them that, right? They claimed God, guns, and country or whatever it was. They don't care about country. Trump hates the freaking troops. Republicans didn't care. Thank you, Amy. He hates the troops. He said it repeatedly. He refused to visit the war dead because he thought they were, A, his hair was going to get wet, and B, he called them losers and suckers because they got killed and captured. Our war dead. How can you people support this man and claim you're a Republican? I was a Republican. I know what it's like. You actually supposed to care about the country. It's sick. And God, you believe in God and you support this man? As a religious voter, you support this man? Are you insane? No, it is these are, I'm sorry, but thank you, Kronos. These are people who don't care about God. They don't care about our country. And I think they're too partisan. And for whatever reason, they just figure, I don't want to vote for a Democrat. I'm going to vote for a Republican because that's what I do. And if that's what you do, then, then we're going to lose the country. I mean, we're literally going to lose the country. Where already things are getting dangerous enough in terms of the violence. This guy comes back and does this. God only knows what's going to happen. So, yeah. Grr. Don't ask me those questions. They're very depressing. No. Nikki Haley, I don't know that I agree with Nikki Haley on policy. She seems like a sane person, which nowadays is a big step up. In the past, you might have said she's awful, she's conservative, whatever, but she seems normal. I like normal. Nikki Haley's normal. Chris Christie's normal, but Chris Christie also played a lot of games. Nikki Haley did too. I mean, Nikki Haley sucked up to Trump. Chris Christie was even worse in sucking up to Trump. Even worse. But I think I suspect both of them would be good presidents. That doesn't mean I would agree with their policies or vote for them, right? But would they be good leaders? Yes. I think she's a normal human being, would be a good leader. I think Chris Christie is a normal guy, be a good leader. Chris Christie can be an ass. There's a little corruption going on there. That's not my point. I'm just saying, Trump, insane. I mean, absolutely insane, absolutely corrupt, everything. It's just not even, I mean, my God, we haven't even talked about policy. We're just talking about him as a human being. The classified information stuff, my God, everything about the guy Jesus Christ. Anyway, don't get me talking about him. No, I'm not saying I support Chris Christie, but you get the difference. You know what I mean? Chris Christie isn't going to dismantle our democracy. Donald Trump will. Chris Christie and Nikki Haley are not going to divulge our state secrets to the Russians. Donald Trump already did. And then he told some idiot at Mar-a-Lago that he was bragging about our nuclear submarines and gave him super classified information about the nuclear submarines he gave them. God, I think I told you guys, I was on a nuclear submarine once when I worked in the U.S. Senate and was trying to get information, and they won't tell you anything. I was trying to get simple information. I had the clearances too. I had top secret, above top secret security clearances. And we were touring a nuclear submarine because I was working as a foreign policy aide in the United States Senate. And very cool, on the submarine, USS Tennessee, and we're underwater. It's very cool. I mean, really cool experience. And I'm asking one of the guys, because we're supposed to answer our questions, how deep the submarine can go. And he said, I can't answer. That's classified. And I said, well, what's the classification level? And he said, secret. And I said, well, that's great, because my classification level is above top secret. So you can tell me. And he said, and he got a little confused. And I said, everybody with us has a secret or higher clearance. That the whole group has a higher clearance. And he got a little confused and then said, well, you don't have need to know, which is another aspect of classified information. You not only have to have the right clearance, but you also have to have a need to know. So it's not enough that I have the right classification level. Like if it's secret, I've got to have a secret level clearance or higher. And I did. I also have to have a reason to know. Actually, not even a reason, a need to know, a good reason to know the information, or it can't be shared, right? I couldn't find out how deep the damn sub could go. And Trump was telling some stranger how many nuclear missiles the subs have and how close they can get to a Russian submarine before the Russian submarine can hear them. Or vice versa. Or was it how close we can get to a Russian sub before we can hear them? But it was some super secret about the Russian subs. I mean, again, I couldn't find out how deep the damn thing goes. That's nothing. I mean, that's something, but that's nothing compared to the stuff Trump gave away. Thank you, Nicola. Anyway, really just ticks me off. Really ticks me off. Anyway, some of our subs have nuclear weapons on them, not all of them. The one in the one that's off of Israel right now does not. It has Tomahawk cruise missiles. At least allegedly, it does not have nuclear weapons on it. I'm sure the one I was on did. Pretty sure about that. Oh, what about Turkey? Oh, Turkey, Garrick. Lately I'm feeling about Turkey and Hungary actually the way I feel about Russia. It'd be nice if they would just join the West and stop playing games. Russia missed a great opportunity in the 1990s. Thank you, Angie. And Turkey is also missing a great opportunity, and they've been for a couple decades now. And even more so, Hungary. I mean, not more so. Hungary's going along the same path now, but Turkey especially. Turkey should just hitch its wagon to the West and not look back. It really, Oh, Tomahawks have a nuclear version? Interesting. Well, supposedly there were no nukes on the sub that we sent there, but who knows? Because they didn't tell us exactly which sub it was. I already did Shahar. I already did like so much of the show talking about 10-7. I'm just not gonna get into it. It's too much to talk about. That's like half the show was about that. You know what I mean? So sorry, but I don't want to like bore everybody by sort of answering a general question again. Anyway, in short, very bad, requires a horrific response from Israel. And then we got into a long discussion on, but what should Israel's response be? And the problem is people have not been able to give a very good answer of what Israel's response should be in response to such a horrific attack. They're able to tell us what it shouldn't be, like don't kill civilians or whatever, right? But they're not able to say, but Israel should have done this to take out Hamas or whatever. No one's able to actually explain what this is. That is my short answer. As always on this conflict, it's effed up. It's complicated. Everyone hates everybody, which makes it difficult to discuss. And I don't know that there's any solutions unless both sides really decide they want to have solutions. And I don't know that they do. Albanian. Yeah, I'm sure. I'm most likely part Albanian or Greek Albanian, but as well, but and Greece has got some corruption too, actually. Stooge is saying, never forget it was the Russians that escalated World War I from a regional conflict to a broader war between entangled alliances. Okay. How are you relating that to this right now, though? Are you saying like the Russians could muck things up in the Middle East more? I don't know. And Brendan is saying, do you think we'll see a Crimean offensive by the Ukrainians this winter? With the F-16s and the Abrams, the F-16s don't arrive until at best spring at this point that we know of. At worst, August. So they're not arriving anytime soon. The thing is, like, an offensive against Crimea with what troops at this point? They assembled their troops and everything for this big counteroffensive. I don't know. Maybe they're going to be able to pull something off over in Kherson by the Dnipro River, right? South of the river, they've got some troops. I was quoting this guy, Sean Bell at Sky News, who was saying, there's a chance that they're able to build up more troops there and actually have kind of a breakthrough and be able to go south and cut off Crimea. God knows they'd love to do it, but some of the people think that's part of the problem, that basically the Ukrainians made a huge push, south towards Crimea in essence, and they went through Russia's worst defense, or I should say Russia's best defenses, because they really wanted to make that push to the south by Crimea, and maybe they shouldn't have, So, who knows? All right. So Stooge was saying, never forget it was the Russians that escalated World War I from a regional conflict to a broader war between entangled alliances. And the reason they did it is they wanted to conquer Constantinople. They've escalated small wars for questionable gains in the past. Okay. Anybody? You're getting into advanced history for my tastes there. I'm also not as good at the 100 years ago. I'm very good at U.S. foreign policy post World War II, but before, less good. Oops, sorry, get rid of that. If anybody wants to weigh in on that, feel free to. And thank you for that, by the way. Sorry, see what else. Just looking here. Can I give this guy his wings? Wings. Goodbye, wings. Goodbye, wings. Hello, Angel. Boom. Boom. Anyway, what did you miss with Israel? We talked a lot about it. What do you think will be with Turkey? I mean, it depends what you mean. Like I don't know what's going to happen with Turkey. I mean, I do wish, like I said, I think Erdogan is a little dangerous, just like Orban in Hungary. You know, it would have been nice if somebody a little more pro-Western, a little more pro-democracy won. I also think Turkey just needs to kind of join the West like Greece did, you know, and even Greece is still one of the poorer countries of Europe, you know. I mean, Greece is still not France or the UK. And Turkey's kind of in the same boat, you know. I mean, my family's, I'm Greek. They need to, I really do. I think at some point you got to decide who you want to be. Do you want to be a Middle Eastern country, or do you want to be a Western country, a European country? I think you'd do a lot better with being a European country, you know? I mean, I don't know a lot about Mitsotakis. You know, I mean, I know about him, but I don't really know him. I met his sister when she was foreign minister. She was very nice. She had me come to the office and meet her because my uncle was foreign minister many, many years before she was. So she was very nice. I liked her. Very smart woman. Very smart. Thank you, Pam. All right. I'm thinking we may call it quits, guys. You're late. You're very late, Pam. We're an hour and 35 minutes into this. All right, guys, I'm going to call it quits. Remember, Saturday morning, I am not doing the hangout because I am flying on Saturday to Chicago. I might do one Sunday morning for the paid subscribers. I probably will, but let's give me a day to sort of think about it. I probably will. But otherwise, I'm going to go right now and do some more of my videos on TikTok, since TikTok screwed up one of my videos again by putting music to it, which is especially on this issue. I'm like, on Israel or Ukraine, I don't want music on my video, you know? But what do you do? In any case, so yeah, I'm going to go. I've not been to Israel. Nope. I haven't been to the Middle East. I've been wanting to go forever. I've been to Morocco. That's about as close as I got, which isn't very close. Well, that's not true. I've been to Cyprus. Cyprus is as close as I got, but Cyprus is not the Middle East. You know what I mean? So that's about as close. So I got close, but I didn't really. Was supposed to go to Lebanon for work. It got canceled. Was supposed to go to Jordan for work. It got canceled. So, you know, it just never materialized. So unfortunately, always wanted to go. So hopefully, I mean, I want to go to a lot. I want to go to Jordan and see Petra. I want to go to Israel. I'm dying to go to Egypt, right? Lebanon's supposed to be beautiful. You know, lots of places. I mean, Syria, if it weren't a disaster, I had a lot of friends in Syria before, but Syria, forget it, obviously. So what do you do, you know? Anyway, thank you, Sam. Appreciate it. All right, guys, I'm going to sign off. I'm going to do my, more Sasha videos. Now I'm going to go and do my videos on TikTok now about Ukraine and Israel, and then I will see you guys tomorrow night. Oh, excuse me. Tomorrow night, 6 o'clock Eastern time, US, and we will continue the conversation. All right. All right. Thanks, guys. Have a good night. Thank you for the gifts, and thank you, mods. Oop, Sasha's there. I'm going to go say hi to my dog. All right. Thanks, guys.